I took a job inspecting an abandoned house. I wish I hadn't. It all started just like everything else in my life by chance. I worked at a small, outdated construction company in a quiet town. I, like most people, lived on autopilot, consumed by work, weekend hangouts, and the occasional quiet evening at home reading books. But everything changed the day I received a call from my boss, Ben. "I've got a task for you, Amelia." His voice was strangely tense, as though he were trying to come up with something convincing. "We need someone to check out an old house on the outskirts. It's been abandoned for years, and we need an assessment of the building's condition. Maybe it can be salvaged." I didn't think twice and agreed. After all, what else did I have to do? But what was supposed to be a simple check turned into something far more disturbing. We all knew about this house. It stood on the edge of town, surrounded by tall trees that shielded it from view. It was older than my parents' generation. Rumors had circulated for years about strange happenings inside, but most people simply dismissed them. I thought these rumors were just that, rumors. But still, something about it made me uneasy. The moment I set foot inside the building, I felt it. The heavy atmosphere that hung in the air, thick with dust and time. The hallways seemed endless, the walls stained and decaying, and the rooms eerily quiet, as if the house itself didn't want to be there. I walked into one of the rooms. The windows were covered in so much grime that no light filtered through. Yet there was something else, a faint smell of rot, almost imperceptible but undeniable. It was strange how each step I took across the wooden floors sounded too loud for such an empty place, and with every step, that quiet dread grew stronger within me. By the time I reached a room on the second floor, I saw it. It was an old mirrored cabinet. It sat there, in the corner where there shouldn't have been any furniture at all. I couldn't resist. I approached it cautiously. What struck me as odd was that the cabinet appeared almost brand new, standing out starkly against the dilapidated surroundings. I carefully opened the doors. Instead of seeing my reflection, I saw something else entirely. A soft, milky light flickered inside, and from where I stood, I felt a cold breeze wrap around my neck. Even though there were no open windows in the room, I took a step back, my heart racing, and I felt a pressure building in my head. What was this cabinet? What was the source of the light? At that moment, I heard the door behind me creak, and I froze. Something wasn't right. I turned around slowly, and that's when I saw it, a figure, standing in the shadows. It wasn't a man or a woman. The figure had no distinct features, no recognizable traits, but its presence was undeniable. The figure didn't move, yet I felt its gaze penetrate me. I could almost hear its eyes, cold and empty, staring directly through me. "You shouldn't be here." The voice came out like a whisper, yet it was so clear, so cold, that it sent a chill down my spine. I froze, too stunned to react, my body paralyzed with fear. I managed to stammer out a question, my voice cracking. "Who are you?" It didn't answer. The figure took a step forward, but its movements were unnatural, like it wasn't entirely part of this world. I was terrified, but something kept me rooted to the spot. I wanted to run, but my legs wouldn't move. I wanted to scream, but no sound came out. The figure didn't seem to care about my fear. It was as if I wasn't even human in its eyes. It wasn't real. Or was it? With a sudden jolt, I snapped out of my trance. I bolted toward the stairs, but as I tried to flee, the door to the room slammed shut. I turned the handle desperately, but it wouldn't budge. Panic set in, my breath coming in ragged gasps. I could hear the sound of footsteps now, not my own but someone else, moving in the darkness. I felt trapped. The walls were closing in on me, and the figure's presence seemed to seep into every corner of the room. I couldn't escape. I wasn't even sure if I wanted to. "Let me out," I screamed, but no one was there to hear me. The room was silent again, the air heavy with something sinister. I had to get out. I had to leave before whatever it was in this house swallowed me whole. But the thing was, I couldn't get out, and I wasn't sure I wanted to. The room was silent again, but the tension was palpable, heavy in the air. I stood frozen in place, still clutching the cold metal handle of the door, hoping that if I just held on long enough, it would open. But nothing happened. The footsteps, the figure, they had all vanished. My heart pounded in my chest like a drum, my breath shallow and rapid. I tried the door again, but it didn't give. Panic surged through me as I backed away, my hands trembling. My brain screamed at me to leave, to run, but where? The house was a labyrinth, and I wasn't even sure how to get out anymore. The fear that gripped me wasn't just of the figure or the house, it was of losing control, of not being able to find my way back to sanity. I turned my back to the door and took a step toward the room, hoping it might lead to something, anything, to break the suffocating isolation I was feeling. But that's when I saw it. At the far end of the room, partially hidden behind a heavy curtain, was a small desk. It was old, covered in dust and cobwebs, but what caught my attention wasn't the desk itself. It was the small box sitting atop it, gleaming faintly in the dim light filtering through the grimy window. My instinct told me to ignore it, to leave the house as quickly as I could. But curiosity, that damned curiosity, pulled me closer. I walked slowly toward it, unsure of what I expected to find. The box wasn't large, but it had an odd, ornate design on its surface. It seemed out of place, too delicate for such an abandoned house. The symbols carved into the wood were unfamiliar to me. Something ancient, something unsettling. I reached for the box, my fingers brushing against the smooth surface. As soon as I touched it, a cold chill shot through me, like a jolt of electricity. I yanked my hand back, startled by the sudden sensation, but the box remained where it was, unyielding. For a moment I considered leaving it alone, but my hand itched to open it, to see what was inside. Slowly, I lifted the lid, feeling a strange weight in the air as I did so. The box creaked open, revealing a small, worn notebook nestled inside. The pages were yellowed with age, and the ink on the first page had faded almost to the point of illegibility. But what caught my attention wasn't the writing, it was the drawing on the inside of the cover. It was a simple sketch, but it sent an immediate shiver down my spine. The figure was unmistakable. It was the same figure I had seen earlier, standing in the shadows, watching me. But this time, it was drawn with sharp, exaggerated features, its hollow eyes staring back at me in a way that felt too real, too personal. I slammed the book shut and shoved it back into the box, my heart racing. I wasn't sure what had just happened, but I couldn't deny that something was terribly wrong with this place. Something was pulling at me, twisting my thoughts, making me question everything I had ever believed. Suddenly I heard the sound again. Footsteps, slow and deliberate, coming from the direction of the stairs. My breath caught in my throat as I spun around, my eyes scanning the room, searching for any sign of the figure. But there was nothing. No movement, no shadow, just silence. The footsteps, however, continued. They were getting closer. I felt a sharp jolt of panic surge through my veins. This time, I wasn't going to wait. I had to leave now. My legs moved before I even registered what I was doing, my mind desperate for an escape. I ran down the hallway, my shoes slapping against the floor in a frantic rhythm. The house felt like it was closing in on me, the walls pressing tighter with every step I took. I rounded a corner and nearly collided with a wall. The hallway was endless, each turn feeling like it led me deeper into the bowels of the house. The air was growing colder, and the shadows seemed to stretch and grow, wrapping themselves around me like a suffocating embrace. I turned back toward the stairs, hoping to see the front door, my only way out, but it was nowhere in sight. The house had become a maze, its layout shifting, changing with every step I took. The more I tried to escape, the more lost I became. The footsteps were still behind me, now quicker, closer. I could feel the presence of something that wasn't human, following me, stalking me. My breath came in ragged gasps, my hands slick with sweat as I clutched the walls for support. I was so close to panicking, to losing myself entirely. And then, as if by some twisted miracle, I stumbled into a room that wasn't there before. The door slammed shut behind me and I turned to face the dark, empty space I had found myself in. The room was bare, except for a single chair sitting in the center facing a mirror. The mirror was large, too large for the room, its surface darkened with age. I stepped forward, my curiosity outweighing my fear. The reflection that greeted me wasn't my own. At least, it wasn't completely mine. I could see myself standing in the room, but my eyes were hollow, black pits, devoid of any life. My skin was pale, as though all the color had been drained from me. And behind me, in the reflection, I could see the figure again standing in the doorway, just out of reach. It was closer now, and this time, it was smiling. I turned around, but there was nothing behind me. I was alone. The smile in the mirror twisted, darkened, and then the reflection of me grinned back. My own face, staring at me with an expression I didn't recognize. I screamed. I don't know why. but I screamed at the top of my lungs, desperate for someone, anyone, to hear me. But there was no one. No one to save me. No one to pull me out of this nightmare. The air in the room grew heavier, colder. I could feel the presence behind me again, its fingers brushing against my neck, its breath on my skin. I spun around. But there was nothing. I was completely alone. And then, in the silence that followed, I understood. The house wasn't just haunted. It was feeding on me. I don't know how much time had passed since that moment in the mirror. Minutes? Hours? The darkness around me seemed to stretch, pulling at my consciousness, warping the space itself. I was numb, barely able to move, my legs frozen as I stood there, staring at the empty room. The air was thick with something I couldn't explain, something alive. I tried to shake the vision of my reflection from my mind. The twisted smile, the hollow eyes staring back at me. Not my own, but something else entirely. The reflection was wrong, just like everything in this house. And yet, in some strange, twisted way, it felt familiar. It was as if I had seen it before. No, not seen it, but felt it. The chill that ran through my spine when I first entered this place. The footsteps that echoed through the hallways, as if the house itself was following me. The presence, always just out of reach, but always there. It was all connected. The house, the figure, and me. Somehow, I was part of whatever nightmare this place had become. I turned back to the door, hoping to escape, but to my horror, it was gone. The walls had closed in, sealing me in this room. I backed away from where the door had once been, panic creeping up my throat, choking me. I had no idea how to get out, and the thought of being trapped here forever gnawed at my sanity. The temperature in the room had dropped even further, and I could see my breath misting in the air. I wrapped my arms around myself in an attempt to keep warm, but it did nothing to stave off the growing sense of dread. The room felt alive, breathing, pulsing, as if the house itself was watching me. Suddenly, I heard a sound, a low, guttural noise that seemed to come from the walls themselves. It wasn't a voice. It wasn't even human. It was something else. Something ancient. Something angry. The walls began to crack, and the floor beneath me groaned as if it were about to give way. The entire house was shifting, changing, reacting to my presence. I stumbled backward, my heart pounding in my chest. I didn't know what to do. The house was alive, and it was no longer just a building. It was a predator, stalking me, waiting for me to slip up. It was going to swallow me whole if I didn't find a way out. My mind raced, trying to remember anything that could help me escape this madness. But there was nothing, just the eerie, oppressive silence, punctuated by the occasional groan of the house shifting around me. I turned again, searching for any sign of an exit, but the room was endless, the walls stretching out farther than they should have. The door that had been there moments ago was gone, replaced by nothing but shadow. I was trapped. And then I heard it again. The footsteps, closer this time, slower. The figure was coming for me, moving through the darkness like it was its domain. The shadows in the corners of the room seemed to ripple as it approached. I could feel its presence before I even saw it. Cold, suffocating, overwhelming. I could feel it closing in on me, wrapping around me, pulling me deeper into the house. I turned, but there was nothing. No figure, no footsteps, just the same empty space, mocking me with its silence. But I felt it. The pressure was mounting, and I could feel my sanity fraying at the edges. I couldn't stay in this room. Couldn't stay in this house. But I had no idea where to go. I turned and ran, my feet slapping against the cold floor, my breath coming in ragged gasps. The house seemed to close in around me, its walls shifting, moving like some monstrous entity. I wasn't sure where I was going, only that I needed to get out. I ran down a narrow hallway, my hands scraping against the walls as I passed. The house was alive, and it wanted me. I had to escape, or it would consume me. But as I turned a corner, I skidded to a stop. The hallway stretched out before me, but at the end of it stood a figure. It was tall, humanoid, and cloaked in darkness. I couldn't make out its features, but I could feel its gaze on me, heavy and suffocating. It didn't move, just stood there watching. I didn't know what to do. Every instinct told me to run, but I couldn't. My legs wouldn't move. The house had me. It had ensnared me in its web, and I was just another helpless victim, lost in its labyrinth. But then, something shifted. The figure in front of me moved, But it wasn't walking. It was gliding, floating just above the ground, moving toward me with unnatural speed. My heart raced. Panic surged through me, and I screamed. I screamed for help, for escape, for anyone to hear me. But there was no answer. The house was deafening in its silence. The figure stopped just a few feet away from me. Its hollow eyes locked onto mine. I could feel its cold presence, like ice sinking into my bones. It reached out, its hand extending toward me. But before it could touch me, I felt a surge of heat, a burning sensation racing up my arms. The figure recoiled, its expression flickering with something like surprise or anger. It wasn't expecting this. The heat intensified like a fire burning within me, forcing the figure back. For a moment, I felt in control, like I could push back against the darkness. But then the walls trembled, and the house groaned in protest. It wasn't going to let me escape so easily. The heat flickered, then died, leaving only the cold, suffocating darkness once again. I ran again, turning in another direction, hoping for some kind of salvation. The house seemed endless, like an infinite maze. There was no way out, no escape. The walls were closing in, and I could hear the figure's footsteps behind me, closer and closer, as the house itself seemed to be tightening its grip. I didn't know how much longer I could keep going. I was running on sheer instinct now, my body on autopilot as the fear and panic drove me forward. But the house had other plans. The walls began to shift again, moving like liquid, bending and warping around me. The doorways I had passed through were no longer there. The house had swallowed them whole. I was trapped, completely and utterly trapped. The air in the house was suffocating, heavier than ever before. My lungs burned as I gasped for breath, but it felt like I was suffocating from the inside out. It wasn't just the physical air that was oppressive either. It was something in this house that was beyond what I could understand. It was a malevolent force that fed on fear, on panic. It thrived on my desperation. I had no idea how long I had been running. Minutes? Hours? The darkness had stretched into a seemingly endless void, and I was sure I had circled back to where I started. The rooms, the hallways, they all blurred together. Every corner I turned seemed to lead me further into the nightmare, deeper into the heart of the house. My mind was spinning, but there was something else gnawing at the edges of my thoughts. Something I had noticed earlier, but only now was I truly beginning to understand. The house wasn't just shifting. It was listening, watching, waiting. The walls weren't just moving, they were reacting to me, to my presence. It was as if the house could feel my fear, could sense my every move. I stopped, my legs trembling, my heart pounding in my chest. Sweat beaded on my forehead, and my breath came in shallow gasps. I couldn't keep avoiding it. Whatever this house was, whatever had taken hold of it, was never going to let me go. In the stillness I heard something soft, almost like a whisper. At first I thought it was just my mind playing tricks on me, but then the whisper grew louder, clearer. "Help me!" I froze. The voice was faint, but it was there. A voice, a woman's voice. It was full of desperation, of pain. And yet, there was something so haunting about it, something that made my skin crawl. It sounded almost familiar, but I couldn't place it. It was as if the voice was coming from the very walls themselves. "Help me. Please." I felt a chill crawl down my spine, the hairs on the back of my neck standing on end. I turned, scanning the room, my eyes wide and searching, but there was nothing. No one, just the cold, empty space, the darkness closing in on me. But the voice persisted. It wasn't just a whisper now. It was almost like a chant, a rhythmic, pleading sound that echoed through the house. I followed the voice, drawn to it, my steps hesitant at first, but slowly gaining confidence. Something deep inside me told me I had to find the source. I had to understand what was happening. I had to know why I was here, why this was happening to me. The hallway stretched out before me, the walls creaking and groaning, and the air grew colder still. With each step I took, the whispers grew louder, more urgent. "Help me." It was coming from behind a door. At least, that's what I thought at first. But when I approached, I realized the door wasn't even there. The wall in front of me was just solid, impenetrable. Yet the voice came from within it, as though the room beyond was alive. I reached out, my fingers trembling as I touched the cold stone of the wall. The moment I made contact, the ground beneath me trembled. A low, rumbling noise filled the room, and I heard the voice again. This time much clearer, much closer. Please, you have to help me. I backed away, my mind racing. I had no idea what was happening. I felt a surge of panic rising in my chest, but there was something else too, something I couldn't quite grasp. Fear, yes, but there was also a feeling of recognition, a sense of connection to the voice. I tried to steady myself, to take a deep breath, but the weight of the house was pressing down on me harder than ever. I had no choice. I had to find out what was behind that wall. There was someone trapped in there, and the voice was begging for release. I placed both hands on the wall, bracing myself. It was freezing to the touch, colder than anything I had ever felt. And then, just as I was about to pull away, something shifted. A low, creaking sound came from the wall, followed by the groan of the house. The surface of the wall began to ripple, like water disturbed by a stone. I stepped back in shock, my eyes wide as the wall seemed to part before me, opening like a door that had been waiting for me to find it. I could see the faintest glimmer of light from within, dull and sickly, but light nonetheless. The whispers stopped. Silence filled the room, and in that silence I felt a strange calm. It was as if the house itself had been holding its breath, waiting for me to act. I stepped forward, my heart racing as I crossed the threshold into the room beyond. The light was dim, and as my eyes adjusted, I saw what lay inside. It was a bedroom, an old one, with peeling wallpaper and a bed that looked like it hadn't been used in years. But it wasn't the room itself that drew my attention. No, it was the figure lying on the bed, a woman, her body pale and lifeless, her hair tangled and matted to the pillow. I approached cautiously, my breath catching in my throat as I looked at her face. There was something hauntingly familiar about her features, something I couldn't quite place. And then it hit me. Her face was my own. My heart stopped. My blood turned cold. I was staring at a younger version of myself. I stood frozen in place, my heart racing, a cold sweat covering my skin. The air around me felt thick, almost suffocating. I had seen enough horror movies to know that something was very, very wrong here. But nothing could have prepared me for this moment. There, on the bed, was a girl who looked exactly like my own face, my own features, but younger. She looked as though she hadn't aged a single day. Her eyes were closed, her skin deathly pale, and her expression was one of quiet despair, like she had been trapped in this room for years. The room was eerily silent, except for the sound of my own rapid breathing. I couldn't move, couldn't tear my eyes away from the girl who looked like me. What was this? How could this be possible? It felt like a nightmare, but I knew it wasn't. The walls around me seemed to pulse with a strange energy, and the house itself felt alive, almost sentient. It was like it was watching me, waiting for me to understand something, waiting for me to do something. I took a hesitant step forward, my legs weak beneath me. My mind was racing, trying to make sense of everything, but the answers felt just out of reach. I had to find out what was going on. I had to understand why this girl looked like me, why I was here. My breath caught in my throat when I reached the bed. I stood over the girl for a moment, unsure of what to do next. I hesitated, my hand hovering above her, uncertain whether I should touch her or not. The connection between us was undeniable. I didn't know her, but somehow, she felt familiar. A part of me felt drawn to her, like she was a piece of me that had been lost for years. I finally reached down and touched her arm, expecting the chill of death to meet my skin. But when I did, something unexpected happened. A rush of memories flooded my mind, memories that didn't belong to me. I saw myself as a child, playing with friends in a park, laughing, carefree. But then everything shifted. The scene changed to something darker. I saw my parents angry, disappointed, never showing me any love. I saw them yelling at me, neglecting me, pushing me away. It wasn't just the words they spoke, it was their eyes, the way they looked at me like I was a burden. I saw their faces twisted in disdain, a sharp contrast to the love I had so desperately wanted from them. And then I saw something that made my blood run cold. I saw myself, younger, standing in a dimly lit room, this very room. The girl on the bed wasn't just me, she was the me I used to be. The version of me that had been left behind, abandoned, cast aside. I saw my own reflection, trapped in this endless cycle, forever stuck in the past. My head spun, the memories overwhelming me, blurring the lines between who I was and who I had been. The girl on the bed was me, and yet she was not. The whispers returned, louder this time, echoing in my mind like a chorus of ghosts. "Help me." It was the same voice I had heard before, the voice that had been calling to me. But now, it wasn't just a whisper. It was a demand. I staggered back, my hands shaking. I was dizzy, my vision blurred. I couldn't understand. Why was I here? Why was this house showing me these memories, these painful moments from my past? "Help her," the voice urged. "Help me." The words rang out in my mind, louder than the pounding of my heart, demanding action. But what could I do? What was I supposed to do? I couldn't save this version of me. She was dead. She had been trapped here, abandoned by the people who were supposed to care for her. I turned to leave the room, but the door slammed shut in front of me with a deafening bang. I spun around, panic rising in my chest. The walls seemed to close in on me, and I could hear the faintest scraping sound, like something was moving just out of my sight. "Leave," the voice commanded. But it wasn't the same voice I had heard before. This voice was deep, guttural, full of malice. It didn't sound like a plea. It sounded like an order. I took a step back, my body frozen in place. I didn't know what to do, what to think. My mind was reeling, unable to process the events that had unfolded in such a short amount of time. The room grew darker, the shadows stretching longer. The girl on the bed opened her eyes, and for the first time I saw her face in full. Her eyes were empty, hollow, devoid of any life. And then, a smile spread across her face, but it wasn't a kind smile. It was a twisted, malevolent grin that sent a chill down my spine. "You can't leave," she whispered, her voice hollow and cold. "You are part of this now." I stumbled backward, my heart racing. The walls groaned, the house shaking as though it were alive, hungry. I knew I was trapped. The house wouldn't let me leave. And whatever this thing was, it wasn't going to let me go without a fight. I could feel its presence creeping into my mind, into my thoughts. It was using me, manipulating me. It had been doing so since the moment I stepped into this house. "You're not leaving," the voice growled, its tone laced with fury. I turned to run, but the door wouldn't budge. I was trapped, suffocating, drowning in the darkness that had swallowed the room. I had no choice. I had to face whatever was here. I didn't know how, but I had to fight. The air was thick with tension, almost alive in its suffocating weight. I pressed my back against the door, my fingers desperately grasping the cold metal handle, trying to force it open, but it wouldn't budge. It felt like the house itself was pushing back against me, as if it was determined to keep me in this nightmare. My heart was pounding, my breath shallow, every inch of my body screaming to escape. But there was nowhere to go. The walls seemed to close in around me, the shadows stretching longer, darker, as though they were reaching for me, eager to pull me into their eternal grip. And then there was the girl's version of me lying lifeless on the bed, her twisted grin still haunting my vision. I couldn't let this happen. I couldn't let the house consume me like it had consumed her. "Get out." The voice rasped from the corners of the room, its tone low and menacing. "Get out, before it's too late." I shivered at the sound, a cold chill crawling down my spine. The voice was like a knife, cutting through the already thick air, twisting and curling its way into my thoughts. It wasn't the voice of the girl anymore. It was something much darker, something far more dangerous. I took a step back, my mind racing. How was I supposed to escape? How was I supposed to fight against something like this? It had control over the house, over the very air I breathed. I felt it pulling at my mind, trying to break me, trying to trap me in the same endless cycle as the girl on the bed. I had to think. I had to do something. I couldn't let myself become another victim of this place. A sudden crash echoed from behind me, and I whipped around, my eyes wild with fear. The bed the girl on it was gone. The room seemed to shift, warping and bending in on itself, like the walls were alive, morphing into something else entirely. The air felt thicker now, almost oppressive, pressing against my chest. I could hear the sound of footsteps, slow and deliberate, moving toward me from the shadows. My heart skipped a beat as I strained to see through the darkness. And then, out of the corner of my eye, I saw her. No, not her, but the thing that looked like her. She was standing in the corner, her face twisted in that same malicious grin. But this time, her eyes were glowing, a sickly yellow that sent a jolt of fear straight through my veins. She whispered, her voice dripping with venom. "You think you can escape?" I froze, panic clawing at my chest. She was getting closer now, her steps deliberate, her movements unnaturally smooth, like she wasn't even walking, just floating. "I am this place," she continued, her smile widening, showing too many teeth. "I am its purpose. You'll never leave." I took a step back, then another, until my legs hit the edge of the bed. I glanced around, desperate for anything to defend myself with. There was nothing, no weapon, no escape route. The house was closing in, and it was trapping me in this suffocating nightmare. "Let me go." The girl, or whatever she was, thought, the sound hollow and echoing through the room. It was a laugh that sent chills through my bones, one that carried an unsettling promise of torment. "I don't let people go," she said, her voice mocking. "I take them. I keep them, forever." Suddenly, the walls began to ripple, the shadows pooling in the corners of the room like they were alive, pulsating with some malevolent energy. I could feel the temperature dropping, the room becoming colder by the second. I could see my breath, misting in the air in front of me. My body was shaking uncontrollably, and the voice in my mind, deep, cruel, and full of hatred, seemed to fill the space around me. "You're mine now," it hissed. "There's no way out. You belong to me." I tried to scream, but the sound caught in my throat. Panic surged through me, making my chest tighten with fear. My fingers were numb, my legs shaking beneath me. I could feel the weight of the air, the pressure closing in, suffocating me. I had to fight. I had to get out. I couldn't let this thing take me. I couldn't let it win. Taking a deep breath, I forced my trembling hands to move. I grabbed the bedpost for support, trying to steady myself. My eyes darted around the room, looking for anything that could help me. But it was all darkness, all shadows, all closing in on me. But then, just as I thought I might lose control, I saw the mirror on the wall. The one I hadn't noticed before. It was small, cracked in places, but it was there. It was my only chance. Without thinking, I ran toward it, my legs barely holding me up as I stumbled across the room. I reached out and touched the cool glass, my fingers pressing against the fractured surface. For a moment, nothing happened. The room was still, eerily quiet. But then I saw it. The reflection in the mirror wasn't mine. It was the girl, the thing that had been haunting me. Her eyes were glowing brighter now, and her grin was wider, more twisted. "You can't escape," she said again, her voice soft and deadly. "You belong to me." But this time, I didn't back down. I didn't run. I stared back at the reflection, my pulse hammering in my ears. "No," I whispered, my voice steadying. "I'm not yours." With a sudden frantic motion, I slammed my palm against the mirror. The glass cracked and splintered under my touch, the shards flying outward in every direction, glinting in the dim light. As the mirror shattered, the room seemed to tremble, the darkness receding just slightly, as if it had been wounded. The voice screeched, a harsh, distorted sound. But I didn't wait. I ran. My breath came in ragged gasps as I sprinted down the hallway, my feet pounding against the old wooden floor. The house seemed to stretch endlessly, corridors twisting into impossible shapes, doors opening and closing of their own volition, beckoning me toward them, pulling me deeper into the nightmare. But I didn't stop. I couldn't. I had to escape. The thing, the girl, or whatever it, wasn't far behind. I could feel its presence, creeping through the walls, watching me, waiting for me to make a mistake. It had been hunting me ever since I first set foot in this place, and now, with the mirror shattered and the house enraged, I had no illusions left. It was going to kill me. I stumbled around another corner, my vision blurring with panic. But there was a light ahead, a flickering, distant glow that cut through the dark like a lifeline. Without thinking, I rushed toward it, ignoring the sharp sting of splinters against my skin as I scraped past the peeling wallpaper. The glow seemed to pull me in, urging me forward with an energy I couldn't explain. When I reached the door, I slammed my palm against it, gasping for air. The door creaked, slowly swinging open to reveal a small, dimly lit room, another bedroom perhaps. But what caught my eye wasn't the room itself, it was the figure standing in the middle of it. It was the girl. But this time, she wasn't grinning. She wasn't smiling at all. Her face was expressionless, almost sad, but her eyes still glowed, that sickly yellow light flickering in the dimness, The house had consumed her entirely. She wasn't a victim anymore. She was the house. "Why won't you just leave?" she whispered, her voice hoarse. But there was a quiet desperation to it now. It was as though she was begging me to understand. "It's too late for you. It's too late for both of us." I stood frozen in the doorway, my pulse racing, every instinct screaming at me to turn and run. But I couldn't. Something about her word-sure tone stopped me in my tracks. "I'm not like you," I said, my voice trembling despite my efforts to sound strong. "I won't let this place take me." She let out a bitter laugh, the sound hollow and empty. "You think you have a choice? You think you can just walk away from this? You're already a part of it, just like I am. You always were." I shook my head, refusing to accept her words. I couldn't let this be true. I couldn't let her drag me down with her. I stepped forward, cautiously, my feet barely making a sound on the floorboards. "No," I said again, this time more firmly. "I'm not staying here. I'm leaving. And you can't stop me." The girl's eyes narrowed, her lips twisting into a twisted smile. "You don't understand, do you?" she asked softly, almost pityingly. "It's not a matter of whether or not you leave. It's whether or not you survive. You see, this house doesn't just trap you physically, it traps your soul, your mind, your very being." My stomach churned at the thought. It wasn't just a house, it was something far darker, more insidious. A prison for the mind, a trap for the soul. "You're wrong," I said, my voice shaking but resolute. "I'm not like you. I'm not going to let it take me." The girl's smile faltered for a moment, and then, to my shock, she stepped toward me. Her movement was slow, deliberate, but it was as though she was trying to communicate something, a warning perhaps. "But what?" "Then you have to face it," she said, her voice trembling now. "You have to face the thing that lives inside of you. The thing you've been running from, because it's already inside you. And it always has been." I didn't understand at first. But then, like a wave crashing over me, it hit. The cold realization flooded my mind. The house wasn't just tormenting me, it was feeding off my own fear, my own guilt. The thing I had been running from wasn't the house or the girl, it was myself. The guilt over the things I had done, the mistakes I had made, the people I had hurt. It had all been building inside me, festering and growing, feeding the darkness that had claimed this place. And the girl, she wasn't just a victim. She was me. The realization shattered something inside me. A weight lifted off my chest, and for the first time since I'd entered the house, I could breathe. "No," I whispered, my voice breaking. "I'm not you. I'm not this." The girl, no. The thing that had been her, stepped back, her face a mask of both sorrow and rage. "You don't understand. It's too late. You can't escape the darkness you've created. You can't run from yourself forever." But I didn't let her words reach me. I took another step forward, forcing myself to move past the fear, past the guilt. I reached for the darkness in my heart, the part of me that had been hiding in the shadows all along, and I called it out into the light. It was time to face it, to let go of the past. And as I did, something inside the house seemed to shift. The walls no longer felt like they were closing in. The air wasn't as heavy, the shadows less oppressive. The girl, the thing that had once been her, collapsed to the floor, her glowing eyes fading, her twisted smile slipping into a look of quiet despair. "Run," she whispered one last time, her voice barely a breath. I turned and ran. The house was collapsing behind me, the darkness retreating, the weight lifting as I made my way toward the door, toward freedom. And this time I didn't look back. I was running. I don't even know if I was truly conscious of where I was going. My legs moved on their own, carrying me through the maze of hallways that seemed to shift and bend around me. The air was still thick, but the heaviness, the oppressive, all-consuming weight was starting to lift. I had made the decision. I had faced it, but even now I could still feel the remnants of the darkness crawling under my skin, whispering in my mind. The thing I had ignored, the thing I had buried deep down, was still there, lurking in the shadows of my thoughts. Could I escape the house, the memories, the guilt that had festered for so long? No, I couldn't. I wasn't running from the house anymore. I was running from myself, from everything I had done, everything I had left undone. The silence of the walls around me was a reminder of the mistakes I had made, the things I had lost. It was hard to separate the reality of the house from the reality of my own life. They had merged so completely, twisted together like vines growing around each other until I couldn't tell where one ended and the other began. But as I turned another corner, the final door came into view. The light that I had seen earlier, the one I had followed blindly, was now shining directly ahead of me. It beckoned me forward, pulling me closer, offering freedom. I rushed toward it, my breath coming in sharp, desperate bursts. The door was just ahead. The promise of escape was within my reach. The house groaned, as if protesting my escape. The shadows began to stretch again, but I didn't look back. I couldn't. I reached for the door handle, but as my fingers brushed against it, I felt something cold, something unfamiliar. It was as though the house was still holding me here, holding me back. No, I whispered to myself, taking a deep breath. This isn't the end. I turned the handle and flung the door open. The light poured into the room, blinding at first, but as my eyes adjusted, I saw the familiar surroundings of my own home. The front door of the house, the hallway, the staircase that led up to my room. It was the same as I had left it. I stepped over the threshold, leaving the house behind. But as I stood in the entryway, my heart still racing, I could feel it. The house wasn't gone. It was still here, in the corner of my mind. I closed my eyes, taking a slow, steadying breath. The house was no longer behind me, but I knew that it had never truly left. It had followed me. It had become a part of me, a part of my soul, a dark shadow that I could never outrun. And it wasn't just the house. It was the darkness inside me, the guilt, the shame, the fear. I had thought I could escape it. I had thought that if I ran far enough I could outrun the past, but there was no outrunning it. There was no place where I could hide. The darkness would follow me, no matter how far I went, no matter how fast I ran. But I wasn't defeated. I wasn't broken. I could still fight. I could still choose to face it. And maybe, just maybe, that was the only way out. I turned back to the door, staring at it for a long moment. The house was gone. The girl was gone. But I wasn't alone. I would face it. All of it. The past, the darkness, the pain. Because the one thing I had left was the choice. And I would choose to live. I woke up the next morning to the soft light of dawn streaming through the curtains. The room felt different. Lighter somehow. For the first time in what felt like forever, there was a sense of calm in the air. No more whispers in the dark corners of my mind. No more shadows lingering at the edges of my vision. I could breathe. The weight on my chest had lifted, and my heart beat steadily, no longer racing with fear and uncertainty. But I knew it wasn't over. The journey wasn't complete. What I had learned from the house, from the terror I had faced within its walls, was that true escape wasn't about leaving a physical place behind. It was about confronting the darkness inside, acknowledging the things I had buried for so long, and accepting them. I rose from the bed, stretching, feeling the strength returning to my limbs. I walked over to the window and looked outside. The sky was a soft shade of pink, the world waking up to a new day. Everything seemed so peaceful, so still. A sharp contrast to the chaos of the house, to the madness I had faced there. But it was only the beginning. I had unfinished business, unfinished healing. I still had things to work through, people to face, and above all, the lingering questions that haunted me. Would I ever truly be free? Could I truly live with the things I had done? I knew now that those questions weren't meant to be answered all at once. They would take time, and that was okay. I didn't need to have all the answers today. The house had been a mirror, a reflection of all the things I had hidden from myself, the things I had been running from. And now, standing in the quiet of my home, I understood that I could start building something new, something real. I wasn't running anymore. I wasn't afraid of confronting the truth, but that didn't mean I would forget. It didn't mean I would ever stop feeling the weight of the choices I had made, the things I had allowed to happen, but it meant that I could face it. It was time to rebuild. I went into the kitchen and made a cup of tea. Something simple. Something comforting. I wasn't in a rush. There was no more urgency. No more need to flee. It was strange, almost too peaceful, given how much I had been through. But peace was something I had to learn to embrace. Something I had to allow myself to feel. As I sipped my tea, I thought about the people who had come and gone in my life. The relationships that had been shattered, the love that had been lost. I wondered where they all were now. What had become of them? What did they think of me? And then, I realized it didn't matter. Not anymore. What mattered now was the future. What mattered now was my choice. The path ahead wouldn't be easy. There would still be moments of doubt, moments of fear. But I had learned that fear didn't have to control me. That darkness didn't have to win. I stood up, walking to the window again, staring out at the horizon. There was a whole world out there waiting for me. I had wasted too much time looking back. It was time to look forward. And this time, I would make sure I didn't run. As the days passed, I slowly began to rebuild my life, piece by piece. The scars, the memories, the shadows, they didn't disappear overnight, but they didn't define me anymore. I had the power to define myself now. The house had been a prison, yes, but it had also been a teacher. And I had learned what I needed to learn. I had faced the fear and the pain. I had let go of the things that had held me captive for so long. And now, I was free. For the first time in years, I felt a sense of peace, a sense of hope. And with that hope, I knew I could face whatever came next. If you like this video, please subscribe for more.